When factoring trinomials, there's a lot of different methods that work. Again, if you've learned this another way from another teacher that you like and you're able to get right answers, keep using it. But I'm going to work through these, showing you my method that I prefer to teach. So what I always do when I have a trinomial that starts with an understood 1 here in front of the x squared, so there's nothing in front of the x squared, I start by putting parentheses, x, and x. So I know that x times x is going to give me x squared. That's where I begin. The next thing I care about is the signs. The signs, what's most confusing is how to read what comes in front of the last term. Students want to read that as positive or negative. I want to read it as same or different. If it's a plus sign, it means same. If it's a minus sign, it means different. This is a plus sign. It tells me the two signs are going to be the same. If the two signs are going to be the same, I then need to know what's the larger sign. The larger sign is what's in front of the middle term. So I always carry down what's in front of the middle term here to the first parentheses. I then check same or different. If it's different, I use the different sign. Here, because this is a plus that says same, plus went in the first one, plus always goes in the second one. So before I worry about any of the numbers, I worry about the signs. Now that I have the signs in as plus and plus, I look at the last term and I say, what are the ways to multiply to that term? 12, the ways to multiply to it are 1, 12, 2, 6, or 3, 4. Depending what sign is in front of the 12, it tells you whether they're going to add or subtract to that number. This plus tells me adds to 8. Well, if I add 1 and 12, I get 13. That doesn't work. If I add 2 and 6, I get 8. That does work. If I add 3 and 4, I get 7, which doesn't work. So the one that worked is 8. I'm going to take the larger number, put it in the first parentheses, take the smaller number, put it in the second parentheses. So my final factored form is x plus 6, x plus 2. If I apply the same steps to the problem in B, set up my two parentheses, put in x and x. First sign always comes from what's in front of the middle term, a negative. This positive sign tells me that they'll be the same, so there'll also be a negative here. I then look at the ways to multiply to 12, which are all written here. I'm looking for the one that adds to 13. 1 and 12 are the ones that added to 13. So I'm going to put the larger number first, the smaller number second. X minus 12 times x minus 1 will get me back to this. For parts C, D, E, F, G, and H, there's different letters thrown in here. It doesn't change anything about how we factor. It's important that you see things other than x's, because in your science classes, you're definitely going to see variables that aren't all x's. That said, treat it exactly the same as an x. Doesn't matter which letter it is when you're doing these trinomials, you still follow the same steps. So when I see that this is p squared plus 3p minus 10, I start by making my two parentheses, putting in p and p. I now need to figure out the signs. I start by copying the first sign, which is a positive, then looking to the second sign as same or different. This negative tells me different. Different from a plus sign is a minus sign. I'm now looking for things that multiply to 10 and subtract to 3. The ways to multiply to 10 are 10, 1, and 5, 2. 10 minus 1 gives me 9. 5 minus 2 gives me 3. This is the one I want. 5 minus 2 gives me 3. I'm looking for a positive 3 here. So I'm going to put the larger one in the first parentheses, the smaller one in the second parentheses. That's how I get my final answer. P plus 5 times p minus 2 is how I would factor p squared plus 3p minus 10. Start this one with my two parentheses. Since q is my variable, I'm going to start at q and q. I then see that a negative should go in the first parentheses. This minus sign tells me different. Different from a negative is a positive. Now that I've got my signs, I'm looking for things that multiply to 30 and subtract to an understood 1. The ways to multiply to 30 are 31, 15, 2, 10, 3, and 6, 5. 30 minus 1 is 29, that doesn't work. 15 minus 2 is 13, that doesn't work. 10 minus 3 is 7, that doesn't work. 6 minus 5 is 1, that's what we wanted. So I'm going to put the larger number in the first parentheses, the smaller number in the second parentheses. That's how I get the correct factored form, q minus 6 times q plus 5. For part E, I'm going to start out with my parentheses. I have m and m. This negative goes in the first parentheses. That positive tells me same. Same as a negative sign is another negative sign. We're looking for things that multiply to 14 and add to 9. Ways to multiply to 14 are 14, 1, and 7, 2. 14 plus 1 gives me 15, no good. 7 plus 2 gives me 9, that's what we're looking for, so the larger one goes first, smaller one goes second. For part F here, again, I start with my two parentheses. Y and Y go in first position. This positive I can put in the first parentheses. This negative tells me the second parentheses should be different. So different from a positive is a negative. I'm now looking for things that multiply to 60 and subtract to 4. The ways to multiply to 60 are 60, 1, 30, 2, 23, 10, and 6, 12, and 5, and I believe that's every way to multiply. The ones that subtract to 4, well, 60 minus 1 is 59, no good. 30 minus 2 is 28, no good. 20 minus 3 is 17, no good. 10 minus 6 is 4, that's the one we want. 12 minus 5 is 7, also no good. So since this gave us 4 when we did 10 and 6, I'm going to put the larger one here, the smaller one here. My final answer is y plus 10 times y minus 6. These are b's. When I set up these parentheses, I'm going to put a b in the starting spot of each of them. This negative I'm going to carry into the first parentheses. Second negative tells me different from a negative is a positive. I'm now looking for ways to multiply to 36 and subtract to 5. Ways to multiply to 36 are 36 and 1, 18 and 2, 12 and 3, and 6 and 6. Oh, also 9 and 4. When I subtract, 36 minus 1 gives me 35, no good. 18 minus 2 gives me 16, no good. 12 minus 3 gives me 9, no good. 6 minus 6 gives me 0, no good. 9 minus 4 gives me 5. That's what I'm looking for. Put the larger one first, the smaller one second. To be clear, you don't have to write out all these factor trees every time. If you see which one works, feel free to jump right to it. But I'm writing everything out so you can see me go through the process. For h, I start out as t squared plus 11t plus 24. Two parentheses. Each of them needs to start with a t. This positive sign goes in the first parentheses. That positive sign means same. Same as a positive is another positive. I'm now looking for things that multiply to 24 and add to 11. Ways to get to 24 are 1 times 24, 2 times 12, 3 times 8, 4 times 6. 24 plus 1 is 25, not 11. 2 plus 12 is 14, also not 11. 3 plus 8 is 11, that's the one I'm looking for. Just to check the last one, 4 plus 6 would give me 10, which is not what I'm looking for. So since I get to 11, I'm going to put the larger one, 8, in the first parentheses, the smaller one, 3, in the second parentheses. Just to be clear, the reason I'm harping on this first and second is really because when you put them with one negative, one positive, the bigger number goes in the first according to my method. So technically, if you wrote this as t plus 3, t plus 8, that'd be exactly the same thing and correct. But if you're following through the way that I'm doing it, I'm putting the signs in a way that the first parentheses should have the larger number so that the signs agree. These problems will turn into trinomial problems just like the ones before. But before I get there, I'm going to have to factor something out. Really what I want to look at is the first term. If it starts in this unit, 6.2, as a negative x squared or something else times x squared, I'm going to want to factor it out so I get exactly a positive 1x squared. So for A, I currently have a negative 1x squared. To turn that into a positive 1, I would divide by negative 1. So what I'm really doing is pulling a negative 1 out of the whole thing. Pulling out a negative 1 means changing each of the signs. So what was a negative x squared now becomes positive x squared. What was a positive 10x becomes negative 10x. And what was a negative 16 becomes positive 16. I can now factor this trinomial the way that I factored trinomials previously. Technically, this negative 1 is still in front of it, but it becomes two parentheses. Since I have an x squared there, the parentheses start with x and x. I then look at the next sign, which is negative, and I put that in the first parentheses. The second sign is positive, which tells me that they're the same sign. So I have a negative here, I also need a negative here. I'm now looking for things that multiply to 16 and add to 10. So the ways to multiply to 16 are 16 and 1, 8 and 2, 4 and 4. 16 and 1 add to 17, no good. 8 and 2 add to 10, that's what I'm looking for. 4 and 4 add to 8, no good. So 8 and 2, I'm going to put the larger one first, smaller one second. My final factored form is negative 1 times x minus 8 times x minus 2. For part B, again, this is a situation where since I have a negative x squared to begin, I know I'm going to take out a negative 1. I then change each sign so it becomes a positive x squared minus x minus 20. When I set up my parentheses, I do x and x. First parentheses should have a negative. Second parentheses should have something different from the first, different from a negative, is a positive. I now look for ways that multiply to 20 and subtract to 1. Ways to multiply to 20 are 21, 10, 2, 5, 4. 20 minus 1 is 19, no good. 10 minus 2 is 8, no good. 5 minus 4 is 1, that's what we're looking for. I put the larger one first, the smaller one second. So my final factored form here would be negative 1 times x minus 5 times x plus 4. For part C, I see that in front of the x squared term I have a 2. To get that to be 1x squared, I'm going to need to divide everything by 2. So I'm pulling out that 2, 2x squared divided by 2, just leaves me with x squared. Positive 12x divided by 2 leaves me with positive 6x. And positive 16 divided by 2 leaves me with positive 8. The 2 is still out front, but now I'm going to put in two parentheses, each of them starting with an x. I'm looking for ways to multiply to 8 and add to 6. So the ways to multiply to 8 are 8 and 1, 4 and 2. 8 and 1 add to 9, no good. 4 and 2 add to 6, which is what I was looking for. First sign positive comes here. Second sign's the same as the first, same as a positive is a positive. So I'm going to put in 4 and 2, larger one first, smaller one second, making my final factored form 2 times x plus 4 times x plus 2. For part D here, in front of the x squared term is a 5. 5 does go evenly into each other term, so I can pull out that 5. 5x squared divided by 5 just leaves me with x squared. Positive 10x divided by 5 leaves me with positive 2x. And negative 15 divided by 5 leaves me with negative 3. When I then factor it, I get 5, two parentheses, x and x. This positive I can bring down. This negative tells me different different from a positive is a negative. I'm looking for things that multiply to 3 and subtract to 2. Well, there's only one way to multiply to 3. 3 and 1. It does subtract to 2, so it is what I'm looking for. Put the larger one first, smaller one second. That is the correct factored form for this problem D. 5 parentheses x plus 3, x minus 1.